think what is inspiration? I think it's curiosity. I think it's just curiosity and the willingness and the resources to take the time you need to dig deep into something and to really understand things. Because I think very often the beauty, and especially the beauty in classical music in many pieces, is you play something, you think you know it, and then the next morning you understand you don't know it at all. And what comes to my mind is an interesting story that Christian Zimmermann once told me. He said, you know, my best interpretation of the Liszt piano sonata was when I played it for the first time from the score. And then it took me 3 years to recreate this version. So I think if you meet something for the first time in a kind of virgin state, it's the first time that you see it, you have all the magic, all the wonders, but then you need to start working on it. And so many beautiful things just become routine, and what you're losing is the presence, because it's mechanical things you need to practice, and presence is going more and more and more away.
My name is Tillem Janczukowiczem. I'm an artist manager, producer, both in concert and media, and the founder of IDAGIO, the first streaming service for classical music that we are now turning into a creator platform for artists, orchestras, and performing arts institutions. And I'm going to share my thoughts on classical music, digital, and business models connected with this area. Classical music and the digital world. I think there won't be a future for classical music without digital, and I think every artist, every orchestra, and any performing arts institution really has to think about it in a deep way how to use online. And I want to give some examples of experiences we had when launching the Global Concert Hall in May 2020, 2 months after the pandemic. So until then, IDAGIO was an audio streaming service, and in May we launched the Global Concert Hall, which is a video venue comparable to the digital concert hall of the Berlin Philharmonic here in Berlin, with the opposite, that any artist, wherever he is in the world, can make his concert performances available online. There was a lot of expectation, a lot of hypothesis, and so on and so on. The main learning is that everybody thought, okay, there is a pandemic, we have to stream somehow. The Senator of Culture says we have to make our operas or our art available online for free for everybody, let's stream. At the same time, they said, okay, it's the internet, it's big, so we will sell a lot of tickets. So what happened? That many and most of the big orchestras, most of the big artists, most of the big ensembles didn't sell at all what they were expecting to sell. Because they said, oh, it's the internet, let's just put it there, we are famous. It's not the case. And why is that? I think the big mistake is that we all believe we can monetize content online the way we can monetize content offline, which is in the concert hall or the conservatory. And this is a big mistake. Why? Because what is missing online is one of the most important elements in the concert hall or in the conservatory, which is social contact. Human beings. And I think even most of the people having a subscription to the opera, to the concert, they believe, they pretend, and they are also to a certain extent aficionados who love the music. But if we're really honest, if we look at the motivations, and probably 80% of the decisions we make as human beings, we don't make them themselves. It's our subconsciousness that is making the decisions on our behalf, taking mental shortcuts all the way. What's turning out, we go for the social contact. And I believe that if we come up with a model where you can make content available online, audio-wise, like on the audio streaming service of IDAGIO, video-wise, like in the Global Concert Hall, but also in formats where you can in real time meet an artist on IDAGIO, or in real time where as an artist you can hold a seminar or a cohort-based learning course over a period of 2 months. Then you can put together an image and a picture and also a value proposition that will work online. And that is designed in a way that audiences really take value out of it, because I listen to content, I watch content, but in addition, I get context, I get curation, I get interaction. Maybe there's even a forum where I can interact with other people sharing my passion. And at the same time, if this is impactful and powerful and good enough, people are willing to pay for this, and artists can start earning relevant money online. At the same time, I believe that we are going to return to a hybrid scenario after the pandemic. We are facing, especially in the United States, where financing of classical music depends on a 60-plus generation that is sponsoring and financing the performing arts. And the generations are getting older, but they still have the means to finance the orchestra. They still have the interest, they still have the passion, but they may not be in a position to go to the symphony once in a week. So why not have a possibility where I understand online as an extension of my stage to deliver what I have to fans and to audiences and to patrons who cannot join me in the real world anymore? Why not using online as a tool to bring in the young generation of audiences that aren't interested in classical music yet, but they may be interested in case they are getting exciting online formats. So the moment I do this, I believe it can be a very condensed and a very strong online strategy. And we all know that this doesn't come overnight. So you can really only do this if you accept that, first of all, I have to invest a certain amount of time per week in producing content that's tailor-made for online, number one. And number two, I can only do this if I accept that I'm willing to maintain a direct relationship online with my superfans that are willing to pay me. And this is what we want to do. And this is where we have the tools, audio player, video player, community tools, direct publishing, to help artists and to help orchestras to do this. And I think this is an integral part of the future of the performing arts. That's very interesting. It may be a little bit controversial, but the question is, at the very end, if we ask ourselves why so many people in classical music consider digitization and what's happening now as the end of everything, or why are there so many opinioned people who say, well, vinyl, that's it. I think if you take a step back, what you have to consider is classical music is also a community of very opinionated, narrow, unflexible nerds. And I think it's good. Imagine a symphony orchestra with the greatest talent, with the greatest conductor, working for 30 years without going on tour. And what I'm explaining here is a little bit the black and white version of, for example, the Munich Philharmonic and Celibidache, who have created a Bruckner style, which is incredible. You have other phenomenons like Kurensis and his orchestra, where the musicians are going for free to play with him because he is an inspiring personality. And then you have this group of people who say, well, he is a genius. He is the figure that classical music needs. And then you have this other group of people who say, well, he is the end of it. He has no taste and he doesn't know how to do it. It's all bullshit. He is an amazing personality. He has a very bold vision. He is very controversial. But again, a phenomenon people talk about. Another orchestra, what Simon Rattle did with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. You built something up in the province. Let's face it, it's the province, it's not London, but provinces are great. I'm from the province myself. But you build something in the province and then you build a world brand. And I think one of the secrets not the secrets, but one of the recipes or one of the things that you have to respect in the arts and in music making is that it's taking an unbelievably long time to be a bad artist and even more time to maybe turn into a good and maybe a genius artist one day. And in order to have this persistence, you need probably a certain narrow mindset. You have to be too opinionated. You may probably not have the skills you need as an artist if you're a generous, open-minded, everyday, adopting to new reality kind of person. I don't know. There are, of course, great artists who are open-minded, everyday, keeping up with the newest technology persons. They exist. But very often you also have this narrow, very narrow mentality. However, I believe, and now I'm making it a little bit more serious, I think that as managers, as people who are responsible, who have the responsibility to transport a heritage which is 100, 200, 300, 400 years old to a new century, we have to be open-minded. And I still think that, okay, if you aren't open-minded, probably you won't succeed as a manager. So it's okay if you're not open-minded, but probably you won't achieve what you could achieve if you would be more open-minded. I was very lucky when I was 5 years old. I was offered a piano, and for some reasons I knew what I would do all my life. I didn't know, of course, these days that it's a privilege to know very early what you will be doing in your life, because many people are struggling to find really a passion. And I also consider it a privilege to work in a field that you don't consider work. But it happened for some reason automatically. I started as a pianist. I failed, or let's put it like this. When I was 18 years old, I became friends with Christian Zimmermann. I saw what Christian did, I saw what I do, and I said, okay, he is a pianist. I finished my studies, played a little bit, but it was clear to me to go into management. And Christian also kind of helped me through contacts to go into management. So I first worked in a festival in northern Germany, was running the master classes there. I'm coming from a teacher's family, so teaching and education and having knowledge passed on from an older generation to a young generation is very important to me in general. Christian then also brought me to his manager, to his agency, which was a kind of iconic figure, Ronald Wilford, the owner of Columbia Artists Management in New York. I then wanted to go there for 2-3 years, but the 2-3 years turned out to be 16 years. I was going through a very, very inspiring, special school with Ronald, who in the beginning said, Till, I will mentor you. So I believe very much in this principle of mentorship in whatever genre, whatever vertical. And even when then going into digital, and that was driven by one question. The question that I raised was, how can we use technology to maintain and maybe even boost classical music? Even when I changed from a very closed, people, business-driven, archaic, closed environment, like classical music managers and management, even when moving from that area of that peer group to digital, I didn't change my profession. Because the interesting principle is if you make music as a musician, you can convey a certain emotion. If you do this as an artist manager, you do this as a kind of catalyst helping artists to find themselves and function in the best possible way. If you do this as an intendant of an orchestra, or if you do this by running a performing arts center, you also do it as a catalyst, because it's always about bringing these two groups, artists and audiences, together in a certain way. And we are dealing with an art form that isn't changing that much than theater or other art forms, because many of the authors are dead for 100, 200, 300 years, but there are reasons to still perform them. And after doing artist management for around approximately 20 years, I had the idea, okay, let's see how we can use technology to, in the interest of artists and audiences. And the result of that was what is today called IDAGIO. I didn't have the idea to stop artist management. I didn't have the idea to stop a performing arts series that I had founded in Abu Dhabi, which is called Abu Dhabi Classics, for the government there, which was a mixture of performing arts program, education, and tourism. Very interesting period. And whatever we did there for 3 years was new. So we had the Vienna Philharmonic, the Berlin Philharmonic, the New York they love brand names. They have the means to bring the greatest of any area in the world to their country. And that was a dream to do this. And everybody was there. And that was in a period when I also where I already wanted to embark on this digital journey. That was in 2007. And thanks God, it didn't happen, because it would have been too early. Spotify launched in 2006. It was at the very early days of streaming that the idea was already there. But then I went to work in the Emirates and also continued management until 2012, 2013. And then the time was more advanced already, and probably more fortunate to start what we started then. And what I wanted to say, I didn't stop all these exciting activities to found a streaming service. A streaming service is a very narrow aspect in the classical music or in the music ecosystem, but it was new, and the opportunity and the problem that was lying, and the opportunity was solving this problem was that classical music doesn't work really on Spotify or Apple Music and the streaming platforms. Why? Because you don't have any structural criteria on these platforms. You know, you have song, artist, album, period. That's it. Now, classical music is a system of cover versions. You know, you have one Schumann symphony, one Mozart Don Giovanni, you have one, I don't know, Bruckner 7 symphony, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of versions that are competing with each other, and you cannot find them on this platform. So this is a problem we solved. That was the beginning of the platform, which is IDAGIO, and it led into the leading classical music audio streaming service. But as I was speaking before of the ecosystem, which consists of those who are supplying content and those who are demanding content, the artists and the audiences, we just had built a solution for, let's say, for the supply side. Also not really for artists, because what we do is an exploitation of parts of the activity of artists, because artists are earning, especially in classical music, artists are earning their money in concerts, in real time. Mainly concerts, then teaching. Nobody, or a very, very little number of artists, is really earning money through recordings. These days are over. These days are really over. So a recording is rather a branding, a marketing tool, maybe a way for me as an artist to really document what I do. There are still artists, also young artists, who are very, very cautious when going to the studio, like it was in the good old days. And there are other artists who just consider a recording as a spot. a snapshot of a certain moment, which doesn't have this archaic relevance of a, I don't know, I have the Kempf or recording of the 32 Beethoven sonatas or the Glenn Gould recording of the Bach-Goldberg variation, which is a heritage of human mankind. You know, so the variety is very big there, but that has changed. So we started with IDAGIO, and what we're doing now is adding the creator aspect. So what can we do with technology, not only for audiences, so launching a streaming service, you subsidize audiences, you give them value. So we have created and built reach there. And the second aspect is now to ask the question, how can we use what technology has brought to life, and what technology enables to do? How can we use this for artists? And I think the fascinating aspect is you can give artists all the tools and tell them, do whatever you want. You can give them an audio player, a video player. Recording facilities are very cheap, are very inexpensive. We are living in a world where everybody can be a creator. We are living in a world where, after having built reach on YouTube or wherever, you can launch a burger chain in 200 or 300 cities in one day. A phenomenon of this creator economy, phenomenon of the, I don't know if you want to call it pop culture or post-industrial or whatever. That's not the point, but the point is it really empowers people to do that they couldn't do as long as gatekeepers were controlling the landscape. Labels, managers, and artistic administrators, which is still the case. But what I foresee is a big democratization of the art. And one of my personal favorite ideas is to say, for example, to give an artist, okay, this is you, this is the Beethoven sonatas. Here you have video facilities, you can talk, you can play, you can make interviews, you can cook something, make a menu, do whatever you personally believe is appropriate. And I've made the experience that the moment you give artists really space and freedom, they're coming up with much better ideas than we as administrators. I mean, it's a different mindset. And again, I refer to that. I think our role as managers or administrators is the role of a catalyst. It's a connection between vision and reality, schedules, resources, money, time, calendar. And there are amazing artists, global icons, who can't control time. They are losing themselves in their art. And if there wouldn't be a horrible manager who everybody hates, who wouldn't stop them, they would give themselves away as a present to humanity. It really exists, this kind of artists, and great names. And I think this is the extreme. But if you give artists the opportunity to express their art the way they want, we are going to witness and discover totally new formats, totally new art forms, and all playing in a hybrid world between online and offline. Another aspect that I personally find very interesting in this creator economy. The creator economy is about, it's not about the question, do I need 200 or 500,000 or 1 million fans? This is about the question, who are the fans that really care? Who are the fans that are really loyal? And who are the fans that are willing to pay what I do as an artist? And if you look at classical music, that's where it's coming from. Classical music was church music. Classical music was coming from the courts. I once managed a Hungarian gypsy violin player, Robbie Lakatos, amazing talent. And he was playing in a bar in Brussels these days. And when I took him on in management, the owner of the bar said, "Till, okay, you can have him. It's 50,000 Deutschmarks." Come on, what's that? And I was talking to Robbie, and he said, yeah, it was not a problem for him. Why? Because in Hungary in the 19th century, it was a very normal thing for for the courts to maintain their own gypsy bands and have these gypsy bands playing and interacting in each other in competitions. So it's a very interesting mindset that you can find there. But what I want to say is if you have this kind of tools and you give them the space and the fantasy, what's going to occur, I think, can be a totally new dimension of formats. How to best describe this problem of intimacy, accessibility and not accessibility of classical artists? I think it's a very interesting topic. There's a picture of a man on the piano. I worked with Ronald Wilford. He was the most iconic manager of conductors who ever existed. And he, first of all, is said to be the person who invented the jet set conductor, who was able to have 2 or 3 positions at the same time in order to satisfy the greediness, because it's all about money. This is, of course, black and white, but he was a very efficient, very successful, amazing manager. And Ronald created, and that's where I personally started, Ronald created this kind of iconic, unreachable, super maestro that he still cultivated from the figures he saw in the United States that did exist there in the 30s, 40s, 50s. So in these days, a music director of an orchestra was also the employer. So if a conductor didn't like a musician, he could fire the musician after the rehearsal. And there is still this type of unreachable, iconic maestro who, after a certain time of deep reflection, comes up with a decision, well, I'm not going to conduct Brahms Symphony No. 4, I'm going to conduct Brahms Symphony No. 2. And it takes 4 months to come to this decision. And of course you cannot reach him, and you cannot talk to him. And you can also, maybe you could get a signature, an autograph after the performance from him. Now, technology has changed this completely. Technology, you can now see the music director of the Metropolitan Opera going to the gym in the morning, and you know exactly, you can measure the exercises he's doing. I personally don't know to what extent it's increasing my Schumann experience in the evening if I've seen this person in the gym in the morning, but that's a different question. What I want to say is that transparency has changed the entertainment business dramatically. And I think one of the big problems of this classical music ecosystem is that musicians and artists and everybody in the business hasn't learned how to deal with media, how to deal with audiences. I mean, look at soccer. You have an intermission and you have the second goalkeeper who will never play a game explore 7 minutes why in this very second this happened, but that should have happened. So it's a kind of communicative invitation to come to the laboratory, behind the scene. People want to see that these people are also human beings. They are interested. They're curious about what is this kind of person doing. And I have to say, that's the way how I have embarked into this career. I was a pianist myself. I realized, well, it's okay what you do, and if you work hard, you may have a career and you can be a professor one day with 3 recitals a year. But I was interested in these people, and this curiosity was much stronger. And then I started to interview people. I made interview, I spoke about Richter, I made interview with Pariah, with Brendel, with many other famous pianists. I was inhaling what they do. And I think this is a human thing, this curiosity, because if something or somebody fascinates me, I want to know more. How does he do it? Now, you have this explosion, I think probably in any country in the world now, about cooks cooking food on television. Now, why is that? Because from my home, I can now watch into the casseroles and what tricks and what things are these people doing. And I think people want to be part of the factory, of the process. They want to have a look into the factory. The moment I have looked into the factory and I know how things are being produced, I'm turning into an advocate of this brand, of this factory, whatever this factory is producing. And I think this is a very, very important aspect. And this is why on IDAGIO, and I say this, of course, with a purpose on what we are going to make available and what's available on IDAGIO already. We started as a pure audio streaming service. So the second thing we did, we brought in the Global Concert Hall, which is nothing else than a video functionality. The next thing that we are launching are courses. So artists can teach on IDAGIO, and a teaching session can be, for example, a very professional violinist preparing the next generation of violinists when auditioning for an orchestra to become an orchestra player as a violinist. But a teaching session and glimpses behind the scenes can also be a great singer giving a 2-month lecture about Don Giovanni. Why not have a Thomas Hampson, who is one of the greatest Don Giovannis ever, talk about his favorite productions, talk about colleagues, talk about the conductors. And I think this is stuff that's very, very important, and all these contextual elements are things that audiences are interested in. Now, speaking about what skills you need, I think you need to be opinionated. And I was speaking with a young manager some months ago, and I told him, I really like you, I love you, I love what you do, you're such an asshole. You're exactly the kind of asshole that I was when I was in your age. And what I want to say with this is, you need to be opinionated, you need to believe in something, you need to be bold, and risk to be wrong. And risk that people may not like you, but believe in what you do. And if you have a certain sense of empathy, you will correct what you do with the time. But this is really something I believe is very necessary. At the same time, you should probably also be lucky to find an area that you really have a passion for. And I think what's always important, and it's rather something when it's about management, and when you decide you take an artist in management or not, it's always a question of the ego. You are dealing with big egos. I mean, all these people are so unbelievably needed and wanted all across the globe you are managing. But also with young people, you see that maybe the passion and the true love for music is slightly bigger than the ego. And as long as it's slightly bigger than the ego can be very big. And I'm having a young conductor in mind, I won't quote his name, but if he sees this, he will know. A personality I admire, because people, you need to be bold in this. And there's so many streamlined people just repeating what others tell them, and that's simply not relevant. It's boring. And I think what's boredom? If boredom is probably something, it's a state where what you do, you don't go deep enough. You aren't satisfied with it. It's irrelevant. And I think you need to be relevant. I think it is a major part of the activity of young artists to make sure that they can publish their own audio recordings, they can publish their own video recordings, but they can publish all their activities online. And the way forward we see for IDAGIO is a kind of campus. So imagine a university campus where you have a library, which is the audio library that we have already, where you have a concert hall. We have the Global Concert Hall that we launched in 2020 in May, briefly after the pandemic, where any artist wherever in the world can bring his filmed concert online for streaming. We then very soon also installed a paywall because we believe that concerts shouldn't be for free and classical music shouldn't be for free. It should be for free for children, for those who can't afford it, of course, but we have to respect the value of the art, so it should be behind a paywall. On this campus, you also have studios where artists are producing their content, and that can be an audio recording, that can be a video recording, that can be a lesson, that can be a real-time tutorial, that can be a learning course, whatever, and that can be education. And I think breaking down the core activities of an artist in a very simple way. An artist does three things, besides practicing like hell, of course, for ages. An artist does three things. First of all, he performs. Number two, he teaches. And number three, he talks about it. And many of them talk in a very impressive, fascinating way. And I'm totally convinced that this is a core part of the skill set that you need as an artist in the 21st century. You can also phrase it in a cultural pessimistic way and say, well, you have to be your own salesman. These days you can't be an artist anymore. You have to sell what you do. It's the beginning of the end. That's what you hear a lot. At the same time, I've spoken recently to some young artists and asked them the question, could you imagine that you are not considering yourself an artist? Could you imagine to consider to be a CEO? And the product that you are selling in your company is you as artist. I said, yes. And I think it's a very interesting way to think about it. You are your CEO, you have a manager, you have a marketer, you have a booking agent, you have, I don't know, you have a teacher, whatever, but you are conducting your business yourself. And I think it's crucial for young artists to be a virtuoso with social media, but you need to use social media in the right way. Because if you just want to build your vanity metrics and say, well, I have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube and I have 200,000 likes on Facebook, you can't pay the rent with it. But you can use this reach and direct your fans through permanent call to actions to your formats, which can be an audio recording, which can be a video recording, which can be a masterclass, which can be a tutorial, which can be a pre-concert talk, and then you play a concert online. You can use your social media channels to direct your fans to the platform that you control. And this is our goal, to deliver this online home for a young artist or for an orchestra or for any artist, where we are legally entitled to share the email addresses of the fan directly with the artist, directly with the orchestra, directly with the institution, because ownership of the customer is core. And I mean, if there are some simple lessons to take from digital, is why Mr. Bezos succeeded in what he succeeded, because he did understand that access to the customer is key. And we are still not in a phase where classical music really has understood this. And I think this is something which is important. This is something that we want to drive and to be a kind of pioneer, helping artists and helping institutions to really build their reach online. Because the reason why people are going to Spotify, the reason why people are paying Apple Music is, of course, it's a convenient service. But at the very end, what they are using and consuming on this service is the great art made by creative people and artists. And most of them need help when it comes to the question, how do I use tools online, and how do I behave in a digital world, and how do I behave in a world that is totally new to me? It's new to me, and it's even new to my manager. And that's the dilemma out there. So there's so many many areas to discover and to explore. I think building a business has a lot to do with being a creator, being an artist, because it all starts with an idea you have, and it's just here. And what you then need to do is to develop communicational skills that allow you to bring all the stakeholders that do own the resources you need, which is money, which is time, which is expertise. And this is something that took me 2-3 years. So I invested all what I built in my life 100% into IDAGIO, money-wise, because for 3 years I didn't know how to raise money. Or maybe it wasn't ready, and only after 3 years we were successful in raising the first substantial venture capital investment in IDAGIO. But I think it is very important that you understand the language of the different stakeholders you need in a business. You need to learn to manage them. I personally made the experience that I'm talking by far too much. I should listen more. Everybody has a tendency to talk, which is wrong, which may be useful in a certain context, in certain setup, of course, when it's about learning or if you're interested in it. But I think the capacity to listen is very, very, very important. And I would say by today, I'm still not, by far not good enough in this, but I think this is something you need to train. And in order to be tough to build a business, I would say you need, at least in my case, you need a certain ability to relax, and not relax in the way go and chill, but relax in a way that you don't need to control everything. And this is a kind of a paradox thing. You need this. You need to this focus and love for detail. Probably sometimes even ill, the way you need to love details. On the other hand, without the capacity to let things go, you won't arrive. I think that's very important. And the other important thing is that you definitely, I mean, this is cliche, but definitely you should only hire people who are better than you. That's very, very important. And I think this is something. The first thing I learned from Ronald Wilford, or the first thing he told me, well, you are European, you know, Europeans, they all have problems with their ego. Which is right, but he had dramatic problems with his own ego. We all have this, but I think what is important is the capacity to understand what you know and the capacity to understand and admit what you don't know, because it's not a crime not to know certain things. And I also don't believe that it's necessary to push yourself to learn things that you don't like to do. But I think it's very, very important to have the sense, a dramatic sense for reality that allows you to judge what you can do, what you can't do, what skills are needed in a company, what skills are not needed in a company. Then, of course, you have businesses where it's very competitive and you need to be greedy and so on. But all these are things that don't interest me. I was never interested, I'm not interested in money. I think money is something that follows creation, that follows something meaningful you do. And in some cases, of course, you can do extremely meaningful or valuable things and you can earn a lot of money. But for me, it's always a kind of means to do more, to produce more, to reinvest it, to do other stuff. The most important thing in life, love. We come alone, we go alone, and it's up to us how we treat the time in between. And you may call it an illusion of proximity. I personally would not call it an illusion, but that's what it is all about. And I think the second important thing is not take yourself, and this is probably an illness in the classical music sector, it is a very humor-free zone. And I think the more you have the ability to not take yourself too seriously, the more fun and the more satisfaction you're going to have in life. Don't know, but that's what I believe.